Hey everybody, we're live here at the August 5th meeting. We're about to get started. It's almost 2 p.m. I'm going to try to zoom in. If you have any questions to ask, we encourage you to ask that here. I apologize for my voice as I lost it and I haven't been feeling so well lately.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
Amazing. I love it.
That's live.
It's like a energy saving thing. If you guys otherwise, yeah, it'll go back to 75 in like 15 minutes because it's like an energy saving thing, which is very annoying when you have a big crowd.
Hello, good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dr. Julie Springwall. I am an oncologist. I work at Baptist MD Anderson Cancer Center in Jacksonville, Florida. I am a local resident. I grew up in Brevard County and went to Satellite High School and graduated in 2003. And I'm here to talk today about what most of you know about. We're doing a community meeting today to talk about cancer concerns in the area and also water testing. I do have to admit that I speak in front of thousands of people giving normal cancer research, but this makes me nervous because I know so many of you well. So how did this all start? Oh, so first, back up, that's why I have a PowerPoint. We're going to go over a quick agenda. So today we're going to be talking about the cancer data collection, water testing. I'm the moderator. Hopefully you know where you are at the Civic Center. First off, I just want to introduce the people that are going to be speaking. The City of Satellite Beach is here, present. And Courtney, wherever she's right there, the city manager will be speaking. After she and her team give their results, the Brevard County is going to speak on their results of their groundwater testing, followed by the Brevard County Public Schools. Tina Duskovich is here, and her team will be speaking as well. I just also want to mention that Stell Bailey with Florida Health Connection, one of my volunteers, is live streaming this for a lot of our cancer survivors in other states in other areas that cannot attend. Also, she'll be passing out a grid of some geomapping that has been started, as well as the cancer cases. Also, after the public schools, then we're going to talk about some next steps and some plans that we have in the future. And then we're going to give the county commissioner, Mr. Kurt Smith, and Thad Altman a chance to speak as well. So just briefly, since I know, and then at the very end, you're going to have a chance for your questions. So that reminds me. We're going to ask for all questions at the end. The reason for that being, I want everyone to get through the presentations. I want you to hear all the results. A lot of your questions actually make it answered during the presentations. So just to be respectful to everybody, let's try to stay in time. We're going to do that first. And then I promise we'll leave plenty of time for questions at the end. We'll have a panel at the end. So what I would like you to do is when it's time to ask a question, please ask your question to the person who it's for. All right. So a lot of you have asked how this all started. So in 2014, my best friend from Satellite High School, Ashley Royalty Rain, I have to mention her, she and I both graduated Satellite High School first in our class in 2003, and honestly, she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. She was diagnosed with a horrible triple-negative breast cancer at the age of 29. She passed away 13 months later and left her 2 small children behind. At the time, her genetic testing came back negative, and I didn't honestly think much about it. I knew the breast cancer statistics were 1 in 8 people get breast cancer over their lifetime, but I knew it was rare in people in their 20s and 30s. It's a few months later, I was at a class reunion, and I heard about a couple other of my classmates that had cancer. Again, not really thinking too much of it, but obviously saddened as an oncologist. 9 months later, after Ashley passed away, I was diagnosed with my own super rare 1 in 2.2 million cases of the type of appendix cancer I had. I absolutely could not believe it. And as I was fighting for my life, again, didn't think anything of it until actually one of the oncologists I work with said, "I don't understand why you and your friends are all getting cancer." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you keep telling me about all your friends from high school that are getting cancer." And so I sat down and made a list, and I had 8 cases within my graduating class in the year above and below me. And I thought, that's really strange. Called the CDC, reported to the CDC. They were very grateful, but they said, yes, cancer's rare in that age bracket, but you really need more cases. So really didn't think anything of it. However, I do want to show the cancer treatment and survivor statistics so that you kind of begin to understand why, as an oncologist, to me, hearing about people in their 20s and 30s was very concerning. So if you look at the top graph, that's actually melanoma. The second one is breast cancer. The third one's colorectal. And the fourth one's prostate. These are actually some of the most common cancers. And what you see is all those bar graphs represent the ages. And what you see is the purple is actually the age bracket of 39 and under, so under the age of 40. And what you see there is it's super rare. 8% for melanoma, 1% for breast, 1% colorectal, and less than 1% for prostate. So in general, people will tell you, well, cancer is very prevalent. Yes, 1 in 3 people over their lifetime will actually get cancer. That is true. However, you usually get it, median age, in your 60s and 70s. So super, super rare to get in this decade. And that's actually what I'm going to focus on in my talk today. It wasn't until I actually read an article in the Military Times that most of you have read that talked about these 2 chemicals, PFOS and PFOA, that tested positive at Patrick Air Force Base in the groundwater. This report was published in March of 2018. It's available online for you all to read. Most of you have seen this graph, but again, just in case you haven't, this was the first thing that actually ever alerted me. 28 of 28 samples, the numbers are the highest in the document if you actually search it. And what actually concerned me the most was over here, actions taken, and then the key actions to reduce PFOS and PFOA. And what it said was, perform mitigation activities when the impacts to human health are determined. And I thought, well, I wonder if we're somehow related to that. So I also just want to point out, I'm not a Patrick Air Force Base official, but they did post on their website a link with actually all of their water testing results and their wells that they tested and the values. So it's available for you as well if you'd like to read it. So my next step was, well, what kind of cancer do these things cause? Well, it turns out that the EPA, since they published this, it's actually become a cancer research topic that a lot of people are studying. They're studying it so fast. If you literally go on PubMed, which is the website us oncologists use to look for updated research studies, every week you will see new studies published on these two chemicals. And what they found is in multiple studies, they found these chemicals in mice are linked with cancer. It wasn't actually until this groundbreaking study, C8, which was done based on a chemical plant where the chemical workers, there was 2,507 validated cases of cancer, that this actual began an investigation. And so an epidemiologist group came in, the public health department also helped, and what they did was they published a study and they showed that the people that the highest level of these chemicals in their blood, who were exposed for different variations, ended up having cancer. And what they conclude was that we estimated associations between cumulative PFOA exposures and incident cancers among a group of individuals exposed to PFOA through drinking water or at work through the chemical plant. Positive associations between PFOA and cancer were found for kidney, testicular, and thyroid. In the article, they actually mentioned all the types of cancer that they had, and but they definitely have statistical significance for those three. So this was definitely probably the groundbreaking study that linked these chemicals to cancer in humans. So I also wanted to show that there are other types of cancer that are now being studied, and the reason I'm bringing this all up is because it's a weekly changing basis. So this study just came out, it was just recently published. Oh, this is 2014, it just recently came out, and it's about colorectal cancer and PFOS and PFOA. So what I started was when I initially found the 8 of us, I found the article, I actually just posted it on my personal Facebook page and asked if there was any more. I called the health department. They asked that the citizens actually call the health department so they could start documenting these cases as well. In general, these are very rough numbers. They literally change by the hour. I can't keep up with my emails. So in general, these are just rough cases to show what we've self-reported on Facebook. So what people do is they call the Brevard Health Department, and then they hopefully also go to our Facebook group and put it on there for us so we can see as well. Unfortunately, I can't access the health department's records, so we have to kind of duplicate the data. They actually have more cases than I even do, which means that there are people who on the news are hearing to call the health department, which is great, but they don't know that I'm actually collecting the data myself as well. So that's why these numbers are rough estimates. But in general, we have 250 cases that have people who have called in. And that's all ages since 1960. And you can see here, majority of the self-reporting has happened since 2010, which makes sense. Those people are alive and are able to report. So what I want to focus on today is the number of people under the age of 40, as I showed you before, is a super small statistical anomaly. This is a list of all of the different types of cancer that we have from just 2010 to 2018, the last 8 years. And you'll see here there's a wide range of cancers, and one of the things the health department will say back to me is, well, cancer cluster is supposed to be one type. Well, I will show you that we can actually demonstrate we have multiple cancer clusters within each type. So my point in showing this is, unfortunately, it would be nice if all of us had the exact same type of cancer. Actually, that wouldn't be nice. It's never good if someone gets cancer. But there are trends, and I'm going to show a few of those that stand out. And this is 54 cases, all of people under the age of 40. Now, these are all people I have personally spoken to. That means that their family member, if they passed away, or the actual person have contacted me. So I can actually vouch for every single case on that board. And I know that every single case on that board has not had any positive genetic testing, significant family history, or anything that would essentially, kind of put them in a different category. So Courtney Barker was nice enough to give me the city population numbers, because you need those for any epidemiologic study. So I just want to show you in 2000, the population, Satellite Beach was only 9,000, include South Patrick Shores and Eric Patrick, you're up to 20,000. 2016, you're actually at 18,000. So in general, the number I picked was 18,500, some kind of an average in the middle to go by. It's probably honestly an overestimation because Patrick Air Force Base, I haven't gotten any calls from people who were just directly linked to the base and not to Satellite Beach. So we're going to use the SEER database to compare. And so one of the questions I get is why use it over the Florida Cancer Registry. So I want to explain the difference between the SEER database and the Florida Cancer Registry. So the Florida Cancer Registry is a state-run registry. So for example, every year at the end of the year, MD Anderson, the employer I work for, we actually have to submit by law to the state every single case that came through that is diagnosed of every type of cancer. And then the state takes that information and puts it into counties. And they map it. It's actually public data. You can go on and see it all yourself. It's just numbers. It's all de-identified. And what they do is they track that. Well, when I initially called the state health department, she said, well, we'll look in the Florida Cancer Registry to see if we can replicate your results. I said, well, you don't understand. Most of us do not reside in Brevard County. I was, for example, diagnosed in Alachua County. One of my good friends that's here was diagnosed in Orlando. That would not be Brevard County. And so majority of us were not diagnosed in the county in which we grew up to have the environmental exposure. So that's why I'm not using the Florida Cancer Registry, because honestly, the Florida Cancer Registry is going to do a very good job picking up childhood malignancy rates. Those are the cases, right, where they grow up and they live in the same area and they usually don't move. But for people like myself who are in their 20s and 30s, they're usually not in the county for which they reside. So the data is going to be more spread out. So the nice thing about the SEER database, it was created by the government for essentially the entire country. And they have a database for every single type of cancer. It's really well done. It's actually checked every year. It's actually what us oncologists can use to publish studies. And essentially, it has every single case reported in the U.S. And what they do is they base it on the census data, and they determine how the incidence of cancer should be based on the number of cases they get versus the census data about every 10 years. They've actually been tracking this data since 1975. It didn't become public, I think, until the early 2000s. So we're going to look at some of the SEER data. So I want to show this. It's very hard to see, I apologize. The SEER database is written in this old fancy type. But essentially what I want to show you is, again, the same thing I told you before. If you look at ages 0 to 14, that's the first column, male, female. Look at age 15 to 39, and then the end is ages 40 above. For example, take breast cancer. Between the ages of 15 and 39, you should have 21.4 cases per every 100,000 people. That's how the SEER database does it, per year. And then you look at the women, for example, over the age of 40, 271. So it's much harder to demonstrate statistical significance in people over the age of 40. So, if Satellite Beach population is 18,500, every 4.5 years, we should essentially have the same number of cases of the SEER data reports, because we obviously take our population of 18,000, and from 100,000 is about 5 times divided by. So, take testicular, one of the known cancers from PFOA. So the SEER database is super rare, 0.3 per 100,000. Satellite Beach should have only 0.05 cases per year. Multiply that by 8 years, which is 2000 to 2018, you should still only have 0.4 cases. We have 2, so is that over? Yes. Is that an aggressive cancer? It's usually a pretty cured cancer. But again, it's still rare that 2 people from the exact same class, actually in high school, had that. Number 2, breast cancer, age 15 to 39. These people were all diagnosed within 3 years. 21.4 just showed you over 100,000. Satellite should have 3.9 cases per year. Over 3 years, they should have 11.7 cases. That's expected. We have 13, again, greater. Appendix cancer, again, super rare, 0.3 in 100,000. 0.06 should be in Satellite per year, times 8 years. You should only have 0.48 cases, so maybe 1. We have 3 under the age of 40. And both of these last 2 types of cancer can definitely be fatal. Keep going. So, children, everybody cares and should care. No child should get cancer. ALL, which is just a type of leukemia, 4 per 100,000 per year. Again, this is actually the most common type of cancer in children. But Satellite should have 0.74 cases per year based on the population size. Over 3 years, 2.22 cases. We have 3 in the 2000 decade and 4 in 2010. And that's just as of now. There are probably more children that are actually still being diagnosed that I don't even have in the registry. The GBMs, this is actually a very concerning number to me. So GBM is uniformly fatal. The cure rate at 5 years is less than 1%. And essentially we have the super rare. GBMs, unfortunately, are just in the brain. We don't really understand. There are people that have claimed for years they're environmental cancers and have been concerned about them. But over 8 years, again, we should have 1.48 cases. We have 5. So you're seeing the trend consistently with just the ones I've shown you so far. So I want to bring up another point, which is most of you know this, but just in case you didn't, in the early 90s, there was some concern from residents about a certain number of Hodgkin's lymphoma cases. This is actually taken directly from the Florida Health Epidemiology website. These are their statements. And what they said was, they wrote a letter in response, and they said the Florida State Epidemiologist has conducted an epidemiological investigation into Hodgkin's disease in the South Patrick Shores. They actually made a map of their addresses. You can see on the right, this is all public data, the 12 cases. They say this investigation identified 2 clusters of Hodgkin's in the area, one in the late 1960s and one in the early 1980s. So you can see there, they were the ones that used those words, not me. No cases have been reported since 1984 in the study area. Obviously, that's not true anymore. So they were actually even able to get information from homes because a lot of these, in Shands, a lot of these kids were treated at Shands. And the Military Times article, and all the tiny neighborhood by Patrick in 1991, they discovered, again, the 12 cases of Hodgkin's cited people who had lived there between 1967 and 1983. The 12 is what the official government reports say. The parents say there was actually a lot more than that, but the 12 was all that was legally reported. And I just want to show what that number would mean if they had the SEER database, which they have now. So at the bottom, if you do the Hodgkin's lymphoma back then, again, previously suspected cancer concern in South Patrick Shores, you should have 3.5 cases of Hodgkin's lymphoma for every 100,000 people, so 0.64 cases per year in Satellite Beach. South Patrick Shores at the time was only 6,000 people. That's in their report. So even if you included all of Satellite Beach and South Patrick Shores, over 16 years, they should only had 10.24 cases, and they had 12. However, if you just did South Patrick Shores, they would have had a third less cases. So 3.41 cases over 16 years. So that's definitely statistically an anomaly now. We can see with the SEER database. If you look at now, today, again, same number, 3.5 per 100,000. We've already had 8 cases of Hodgkin's lymphoma reported from 2010 to 2018. And that's just people I've talked to. I've heard that there's actually more, but I haven't been able to get a hold of those people yet. So we have 8, and again, statistically significant over the number we should have. I'm having a biostatistician, by the way, run these numbers for the strength. But I do want to show you that adding in adults can actually make the case a little bit harder. And so I just want to give one example. If you add kidney and renal pelvis, and you take all the young and all the adult kidneys, again, one of the ones linked to PFOA, what you see is that 15.9 per 100,000. Satellite should have about 3 cases per year, so over 10 years, about 25 cases. We only have 6 in that age bracket. So in that case, when you add in all the adults, it decreases. However, if you take the rare cancers and you add in the adults, such as appendiceal, appendix, you should have 0.97 over 100,000, so 0.19 case per year. For satellite, over 14 years, you should still only have 2.5 cases. You add in the adults, we now have 6. So in the rare cases, it does definitely help to add in the adults for statistical power. So what types of cancer are linked with environmental concerns? A lot of them. One of the big ones is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. There are people that say Hodgkin's is as well, but the studies aren't as easily linked. But non-Hodgkin's, there's multiple studies, and this is just one of them I wanted to show. And then in PFOA animal research, they've actually linked it to breast cancer and a bunch of different types of cancer. They can show here at the bottom, I know you guys can't read this, but it says, our results suggest that higher PFOA serum levels are associated with testicular, kidney, prostate, ovarian, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So lymphohematopoietic malignancies, which are Hodgkin's, leukemias, they are definitely linked with environmental agents. And I think that is the message I want to make sure that we hear. So questions still to be answered. So what other trends will we find in the data? Honestly, the more I look at the data, the more trends I find. The more cases I get, the more trends I'll find as well. Final mapping of the cases is still in progress. Statistical significance, again, the biostatistician is going to run for how strong. What, if anything, environmental is causing this pattern of possible cancer and increased incidence in younger adults? And that's really the message I want. It's just that it seems like more young people have cancer in our area than in other areas. Can our blood be tested for the PFOA and PFOS chemicals like some states are? Some states are actually currently testing these in their residents, state health departments. So it's really impressive. And can screening guidelines be made to help those who may have been exposed? So what about all my classmates who graduated the same year as me who haven't had cancer? Why can't they have access to a mammogram or a blood test? Right now their insurance won't pay for it, but that's one of my questions. Is there a way we can help them get screened? Finding cancer early saves lives. Most of you guys know that. Can our local, state, and federal agencies help us with this? Please continue to write them. And how else can we save lives? And finally, thank you for your time. I just want to make a quick reminder. Please pass this on, especially to anyone diagnosed under the age of 40. These cases, you see the numbers. One more case is actually statistically significant. So the more cases that I hear about, the stronger the case we have. They should definitely still call the Brevard Health County Department to report their case. Right now, the Brevard Health County Department is only taking 2 zip codes, 32937 and 32940, and I have been campaigning for them to take a wider range, but right now that's all they're taking. And they're only taking cases diagnosed after the year of, I believe, 2001 as well. I started a Facebook that's our Facebook page that we have, Satellite Beach Health and Hope for Tomorrow. If you haven't seen it and aren't following, that's our Facebook page. I've also started one for just the survivors. I'd like to just be able to get messages out to just the survivors. And so I'm asking the survivors to join that one. I want to take a minute to thank all the volunteers helping me. Stella Bailey, Whitney, Prieto, Victoria Siddig, Jennifer Urfi, and all the decade leaders listed on the right who've been collecting the cancer cases in their decade. And I'm going to turn it over to the experts and the community officials.
Thank you. So that's concerning. We had a lot of phone calls with the Department of Defense report that came out, and we wanted to make sure that we reacted to that. We started looking for a company to test for these chemicals, to test our groundwater. We did find one, which was Tetra Tech, and I'm going to let him go over the test results with you real quick. I think many of you have already seen them on the Facebook page or seen them on our website. The entire report has been posted to our website. And then we're going to move in subsequently to the county and the school board, and then after we get all those reports together, because a lot of them show some relationship, we'll be able to answer your questions and kind of go over the next steps that we're anticipating, because obviously it doesn't end with just these results. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt Shelton with Tetra Tech.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you. So my name is Matt Shelton. I'm with Tetra Tech, and we were asked by the City of Satellite Beach to collect samples from 3 monitoring wells. We installed 3 monitoring wells on city property, or 2 on city property and 1 on county property, and we collected samples for PFAS, including PFOA and PFOS. Okay, so PFAS, that's per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. And that is a group of manufactured compounds. These are not naturally occurring compounds. And we sampled for 24 compounds. 2 of them were PFOA and PFOS, the compounds that were discussed earlier. So as I said, these are a group of manufactured compounds that are not naturally occurring. And they're basically used for waterproofing and making things stain resistant and resistant to grease and oils. They're commonly found in everyday products such as nonstick pans, Teflon pans, Post-it notes, food packaging, and they're also widely used in fire suppression foams. Okay. So we initiated our field activities on July 17th. We installed 3 wells. City Hall, right off the side of the building here, was SB1. SB2 was located on Jackson Avenue in Delaware Port, and SB3 was in Brevard County Parks, Sea Park. So groundwater from those wells was sampled, and we used Department of Environmental Protection standard operating procedures to collect the groundwater. And we also used internal Tetra Tech standard operating procedures specific for these PFAS compounds because they're common in things like bug spray and sunscreen and wick-away clothing. We use specific procedures to eliminate those from the sample. So the sample has to wear all cotton clothes. We don't use Teflon tubing, which is very commonly used in groundwater sampling. We use HDPE tubes. So we try and do all these things to eliminate cross-contamination of the sample to make sure that the sample that we have that goes to the laboratory is what's in the ground and the sampler didn't contaminate the samples, which can often happen. So looking at the results, we did detect both PFOS and PFOA in all three of the monitoring wells. The highest concentration was in SB1, which is right outside of Civic Hall here. PFOA was detected at 0.015 micrograms per liter, which is below the 0.07 microgram per liter US EPA health advisory level. PFOS was detected at 0.0296 micrograms per liter. Also, it was below that 0.07 microgram per liter level. When you look at the US EPA guidelines, they say if you find both of these chemicals, you should add the two compounds together and then apply that, the sum of those compounds to that 0.07 microgram per liter standard. And when you do that in SB1, you come out with 0.0415 micrograms per liter, again below that 0.07 standard. The next highest concentration was found in SB3 up in Sea Park. The combined concentration in that well was 0.03013 micrograms per liter, again below the 0.07 standard, or health advisory from the US EPA. And then SB2, which is located on Jackson Ave and Delora Court, that combined was detected at 0.02285. So we did detect these two compounds in the wells. As I said, there's 22 other compounds that we sampled for, and there were several of those compounds that were also detected in these wells, but they don't have US EPA health advisory thresholds associated with them. As Courtney said, it is concerning that we do have these compounds that have been detected in the groundwater in Satellite Beach. These health thresholds are designed for drinking water. The samples that we collected are in the groundwater, not your drinking water. The locations where these samples were collected, there's no wells installed that are used for drinking water purposes, at least not to our knowledge. But there are irrigation wells in the area, so we need to understand that there's a potential here that you could have some exposure to these compounds. But as I said, the threshold level that the US EPA has set is 0.07 micrograms per liter, and in 2016, those are the standards that were published in May of 2016, and in November of 2016, the EPA provided additional clarification, and they said that the purpose of those health advisories was to, and I quote, identify the concentration of PFOA and PFOS in drinking water at which adverse health effects are not anticipated to occur over a lifetime. Okay. These are compounds of emerging concern. There's not a whole lot of data out there on them. As Courtney said, the fact that they're out there is concerning, but they're below a drinking water threshold in an area where only irrigation wells are really accessing this water. So about 4 feet below ground is where you have groundwater. So as long as we don't have any exposure to the groundwater from those wells, we don't see any issue. So that's basically the results. I don't want to touch into the health effects because that's really not something that I was asked to do, and honestly, it's not my area of expertise. But the results show that we do have levels that are below drinking water standards. And
before I bring up the county, I just wanted to make sure that you all know that when we talk about the drinking water standard as opposed to the groundwater, that we are not trying to minimize the seriousness of these compounds being in our groundwater. We just have to make that distinction because I can't tell you, everywhere I go, I mean, I grew up here, so most of the people, half the people in this room I know personally. When I go anywhere, that's the question I get is this, can I drink the water coming out of my tap? And the answer is yes, you can. It is a groundwater issue, meaning that it comes out of your irrigation pipes, things like that. So that is the source here. That is what we use our groundwater for here on the beach side.
What was the THM count? Did they test for trihalomethanes?
that was not on the list.
No, that's not something we tested for. So I'm going to bring up the county, and then we'll talk about the school board results, and then go over some of the things that we'll do next, okay?
Thank you, Courtney.
It's up there, okay. That doesn't look like that. So when this issue came up, the county had recently installed 3 groundwater monitoring wells within the city of Satellite Beach, using the half-cent sales tax Save Our Indian River Lagoon money. And so we wanted to, because this was our quickest, easiest way to get some data, pull samples for these PFOS, PFOA chemicals from these wells and see what we got. So, and our wells are located on private property, so we're not identifying exactly whose houses we pulled this information from, but there were 2 in this subdivision here and 1 in this subdivision here. This is DeSoto running east-west here. And then we wanted a control because we installed these wells in June before this issue came to us. And so Matt just went over the very important process of making sure that there's no contamination in your well, that there's nothing in the components of the well that would be releasing these chemicals and providing you a false positive. Since we installed the wells not knowing that we were going to use this for this purpose, there may be something in those wells. Our consultant contacted the vendor where they got all the well components, and we verified that there was nothing in there except potentially 1 O-ring that's part of a pre-packed part of the well at the base of the well. We could not get information on the components of that O-ring. So one thing that we did to control for that was that we also pulled a sample from the well down here in the South Beaches, south of Melbourne Beach, and Coconut Point Preserve, in a conservation area where there shouldn't be sort of the residential levels from all of us cooking on our Teflon pans and using carpet that's got Stainmaster and whatever on it. So so this is our control well site down in the South Beaches, and Publix is just off the screen here. So these are our results, and I'm sure you can't see them from way back there. So I'll walk you through them. So we did a field blank. So this is a common practice. You mark all of your bottles in such a way that the lab doesn't have a clue what came from where. And you submit one that has nothing in it, because you want to make sure that the lab gives you a 0 value for that one. That kind of indicates that the lab knows what they're doing. We sent these to the lab in Minnesota. There are 7 states that have adopted their own standards in addition to the EPA standard. Minnesota is one of those. The lab there is the lab that's done a lot of the work for the federal EPA, developing the EPA standards, so we wanted to just go straight to the experts. So indeed, the blank came back non-detect from the lab. So that made us feel confident that the lab knew what they were doing, and nobody was messing up our samples. All right, and then we have our Melbourne Beach sample from a conservation area, natural control. All of our samples were collected on July 16th. We just got the results back on Friday. And so PFOA came back, and I'm going to talk in parts per trillion because that's what the newspaper has been reporting, and I think that's, I don't know, for me it's easier to keep track of. So the EPA health advisory standard is 70 parts per trillion. for PFOA, 70 parts per trillion for PFOS. If you have both, you need to add them together, and the sum of them also needs to be under 70. So we have 2.2 for PFOA, 4.4 for PFOS, for a total of 6.6, well below this threshold of 7. Then for our 3 wells in Satellite Beach, I'll just work from the bottom up, since that seems to be the way I'm going here. This one, the PFOA was 3.7, the PFOS was 15, for a sum of 18.7, also well below 70. The next one was 2.7 for PFOA, 3.6 for PFOS, for a total of 6.3. So this residential site is almost identical to the 6.6 that was down in the conservation area. And then, and I said we did 3 sites in Satellite Beach. Another thing that you do to test the laboratory, how accurate the laboratory is and how consistent they are, is you can send them 2 samples from the exact same well that should come back with pretty much the same data. And so that's what this first one is, 2 samples of the same site. They didn't know we had done this, but we did. And so the data here are 4.7 and 2.8 for PFOA, 22 or 23 for PFOS, for a total of 26.7 or 25.8 at that 3rd residence. So those are the data that we have, and I think that's all I have to present.
Okay, and now we're just going to quickly go invite the school board up. Is there a chance to go?
Sorry, I'm Stan's PowerPoint. I'm Tina Deskovich. I'm your school board representative in District 3. I cover the south end of the county, southeast end of the county, which includes Beachside, Pineda Causeway, down to the end of the county. So most of you have probably read the results right now, but if you haven't, I'm going to go over them with you briefly. I've also brought with me today, when we get to the question and answer portion, our Assistant Superintendent of Facilities, Sue Han, and our Manager of Environmental Health and Safety, Mr. Jim Powers. So they'll be able to answer the more scientific questions for you. I'm just going to give you an overview of what we've done, what the results are, etc. So we tested the drinking water in 13 of our beachside schools, 4 up in the Cocoa Beach area and the rest south of Pineda. We received our results on Friday, and all of the schools north of Pineda that are on the City of Cocoa's water came back. We tested for 21 different compounds. We didn't just do the PFOS and PFOA. We did all of the compounds that kind of fall in that same area. And of the 21 compounds, all of the schools north of the Pineda on the City of Cocoa's water came back non-detectable for all 21 compounds. South of the Pineda, all of us that are on the City of Melbourne water came back non-detectable in 20 of the 21 compounds. There was one compound, the PFBA, that came back with trace amounts in the 9 schools that are south of the Pineda. They're all within 2 to 4.4 parts per trillion, where we've already discussed that the EPA standards are 70 parts per trillion for drinking water. So they're well below. It's that one chemical. One school came back higher than the 4.4, and that is Satellite High School, that came back at 12 parts per trillion. The initial report that came back from the laboratory we used, which was Universal Engineering Sciences, said that there were some quality control issues with that Satellite High sample, that they weren't 100% sure that number was accurate. And so they had said in their initial report, they're going to retest the exact same sample, and we have ordered 2 additional samples to be added to that. We will have them in about 10 to 15 business days, the results from those members. I think that is a pretty good summary of what we've done and what the results are.
Right now, I'm just going to ask the city manager, Courtney, to talk about some next steps that the city is planning.
So, and it's really kind of a next steps with not just the city of Satellite Beach, but also the city of Cocoa Beach. Many of you heard about their test results that came back. Those results are on their website. Their results came back 5 to 10 times higher than our city's results. So we have a lot to discuss among the county, the two cities, as well as with Patrick Air Force Base. And Patrick Air Force Base has been very, very open and transparent. They have sent us all their studies. They've sent us their results. They've sent us all the studies that we basically asked for. So if we ask for it, they just ship it over. And so I wanted to make sure you're all aware of that we're all communicating with each other. Even though these compounds are below the health advisory standard, I think if you speak with Patrick Air Force Base or any of us now that we've been addressing this for the past week or 2 days, you'll find us all express a very large amount of frustration with the lack of state and federal standards for these chemicals. And so that is a big deal that affects whether our decisions of whether we clean it up or not. It affects a lot of things. So that's one of the things that we'll probably be focusing on as a city is kind of discussing things with the state and federal government about creating standards for these chemicals. I know there's a lot of studies going on. It is a relatively new issue. It's definitely new to our community, in our city, Brevard County. I don't think I've ever heard these chemicals, the names of them until March when that DOD report came out. So it is a new road that we're all walking down. We are going to have to continue testing, and the test that we did just recently, we did really fast. I think my city, we even went to council to get budget approval after the fact, which is very unusual for us. So we want to make sure that we do the future testing in a very controlled, scientifically based manner. This last one we did very fast because we knew you were worried. We wanted to give you some answers. So the future testing that we'll be completing, we'll be talking about, with Brevard County, where we want to focus our wells, where we want to focus our testing, and how we're all going to work together and create a big picture. We're not so sure that there's a lot of questions with these results. For example, the result at City Hall was higher, sometimes 2 times higher than the other 2 areas that we tested. So why? Those are the questions that we have to answer. And we have to confirm a lot of these tests as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the tests that we've done, we'll have to go back and redo. We'll have to look at other areas that we want to add to the testing, and make sure that we've discussed those with Brevard County. We also have a big concern with how this affects the lagoon. So we are going to be looking at how do we measure that impact. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we even though it took us a month to do this testing, we work really slow because we're government. Okay, so the next rounds are going to go a little slower. We have to be a little bit more analytical about how we do it, and everything like we have done before will be posted to our website. We'll announce it on Facebook and so on. If you have any specific ideas or requests that you would like us to answer, please send me an email. You can send emails through our website, or you can send it directly to cbarker@satellitebeach.org. I would be glad to take your suggestions. A lot of the reasons why we chose where we chose and what we're, and the fact that we did the testing in the first place was because of you all. So, we are not averse to changing our path because we get good ideas. So please send us those ideas if you have them. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Julie.
Great, thanks Courtney. Next I'm going to invite the county commissioner to come and speak on his thoughts on what's going on.
Thank you. Well, I'm here, just like all of you, because I'm concerned.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm your county commissioner.
You got a name?
If you didn't know that, I'm the county commissioner.
What's your name?
What's your
Kurt
name?
Smith. And
I'm sorry.
this is my district. My district goes from Indian Harbor Beach, north to Satellite Beach, Oneida Causeway, on the mainland, O'Galley, all the way up to the south end of Rockledge, which is, the border up there is Gus Hip and Roy Wall. So I'm here like you guys, I'm concerned. Cancer is not something that we take lightly. I've had an extreme amount of family members that have had cancer, including myself. So when anything like this happens, you have to pay attention. And we have to get scientists involved, because I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about any of this except from what I've read in the newspaper. So I want to tell you, I am your eyes and ears, because I'm not only here listening to this, but I get to work behind the scenes as well, where you folks don't go. I can go right into people's offices and say, well, what about this? What about that? How do we know this is something we can depend on? And I have access to federal agencies and state agencies. So that gives me a leg up on all of you. So that's why I'm here, because I'm very, very concerned, and we need answers. And we need to know whether we can sleep well at nighttime or if we need to be worried. And if we're going to be worried, what do we do about it? That's the key. So I know we've got terrific people in the county here. We've got terrific people in Satellite Beach. They're all concerned as well. And we're going to just have to go forward and keep looking at this and come up with answers so that we can keep all of you folks informed as well. So, yes, sir?
Just out of curiosity, where do you live and how long have you lived here in the county?
Yeah.
Well, I've been here since 1986, and I live right across the river. I live on the mainland, right on the river. So the lagoon is, like I tell people, it's not a political issue for me, it's a personal issue. And I also have drinking well. My water for my house, for drinking, bathing, comes out of a well. So I have those concerns as well. And I know people have said I don't have to worry because I'm across the river, but I don't know how these compounds get where they get. And I know when I'm looking at articles in the paper that say some of these compounds come from Teflon and stain-resistant material, that's in my house. So, and I know it's in my neighborhood, so I'm concerned too. So I want to get my well tested. Even though I'm not here, I'm going to get my well tested. Yes, sir.
I have two questions for you. Number one, when my wife and I moved here in '93, we automatically put a water system in, non-electric, it's reverse osmosis. So we're drinking off the city of Melbourne water, and we run it through a filter system. And we've had no problem. The second part is, as a county commissioner, and the state of Florida, the Satellite Beach, they must be able to get these young people who don't have insurance to get blood tests. Somebody, because a lot of them don't have insurance, they don't cover it. So I think that the state, the county, Satellite Beach, and everybody put together, I think you can get these people who need to have their blood tested.
Well, I empathize with that. He's, I don't know if you've heard him, but he thinks that the county, the state, the federal government should be willing to come up with monies to do blood testing on children. I can tell you my own 10-year-old granddaughter had acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And I'm sure it's not from any of this, but thankfully 10 years later she's good.
Continue to take questions at the end. Just real quick, just to show a visual, I've had a lot of people who've been texting and asking for it. If you would, I should have done this at the beginning and I apologize. If you're a survivor in this room or a parent of a survivor who's currently battling cancer, because I know some of you are in the room as well, I want you to raise your hand so that everyone in the room can see how many of us are survivors and have been affected. Perfect. Thank you guys all for being here. You are the voice in which we continue. Finally, our last speaker is Florida House Representative Thad Altman. Thank you for being here. We're going to listen to your thoughts and then we're going to move on to questions. Thanks so much.
Well, I first want to thank City of Satellite Beach for having this meeting and the efforts that they've provided. Certainly they are right on top of it. Satellite Beach is a very special place. I grew up in South Brevard. I'm a former resident of Satellite Beach. My father had a landscape company. I can remember digging cabbage palm holes right here in Satellite Beach. So I've dug in this dirt I've represented this area off and on since 1984, and this issue of cancer clusters, they're not new. They've been around. I've had a lot of friends that grew up in that area. I used to live not far from there. I can remember in the old days when people would put aluminum foil on their windows because they were fearful that maybe the satellite dishes at Patrick Air Force Base may have had something to do with this. Somebody mentioned trihalomethanes. I'm an old timer. I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, Better Housekeeping and Gardens ranked Brevard County's drinking water, the city of Melbourne water, the water we drink, as the second worst in the country. It was because trihalomethanes. Now that has been corrected. That was corrected by the city of Melbourne by getting groundwater, blending it with Lake Washington water. The groundwater was purified with reverse osmosis, and now Melbourne has very good water quality. Now, does that contribute to this? I don't know, but if you live South Patrick Shores and Satellite Beach, you are at the end of that distribution area for the city of Melbourne. So did that make it worse? Just something I think we need to think about. If you look back, historically, those that lived here or were born in the late 70s, early 80s and after. So obviously, this is something very close to my heart. Anything that I can do from the state's perspective, we need to work very closely with our federal partners, our local government partners in the state. It's going to take a team effort to get to the bottom of this. And if there's a problem, find it and fix it. And if there's not a problem, unturn every possible stone that we possibly can to ensure that we've looked at everything. The blood testing is something that's caught my attention. Very interested in getting involved and seeing what we can do to help make that happen. I think that's a real tangible action that I've got thrown out to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm just going to ask, I'm going to take one question at a time, and I'd like you to address who your question is specifically for at the beginning of it. All right, we'll start in the front. Start with the Air Force shirt.
Pat Buckley, Montecito, and your results of cancer cases look statistically significant. I guess the open question is, do we have similar data for other surrounding communities so we can see what's happening there as well as here, and whether there's a difference?
Yeah, I think it's a hard thing to compare. I've been asking the state for some of the rare cancer numbers. Unfortunately, the rare cancers don't get tracked in the public database like the other ones do. So I don't think it's as easy. That's why the SEER database is the general statistical analysis for the whole country. But yeah, no, we don't have, it would be great if we could compare it against, for example, a community that's not near an Air Force base with these chemicals. But I've been asking the Florida Cancer Registry for some of these more specific numbers in counties to see, but they're still working on it for me. So hopefully we can get that to compare. Yeah, I agree with you, but the SEER database, fortunately, is a nice enough comparison that most people will always run things against no matter what you use.
For Courtney Barker, I just want to know, are we going to be testing like the fish, the river? Because all of us are recreational fishers, shrimpers, we've all eaten that.
I can't tell you right now exactly what we're going to be testing, but yes, the river is a big issue. That I don't think the first question is, am I drinking it? And then the second question out of everyone's mouth that I've talked to is, how's this affect the river? So absolutely, that'll be a focus.
Okay, one of my concerns is these chemicals.
Sorry, who's your question for? Sorry.
It's in general. I don't have it for anybody in specific. But one of my concerns is these chemicals don't break down the environment. That's one of the problems that we have.
Correct.
We also have situations in South Patrick and Satellite Beach where people may not be drinking the water from the wells, but they're definitely filling their pools with them. And you have a situation where you have water evaporating out of a pool, the chemicals aren't going anywhere. You might want to consider testing some of the pools in the area too. You could have 100 times the amount of chemicals.
I think that's been brought up that swimming pools are filled with groundwater.
So one of the things So one of the things that a lot of people were asking on social media was if they could test their own wells and their own pools. That was a question. And so we passed these tables out. These are all labs that will test these chemicals. So that's the contact information. So if you want to do that on your own, you can. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew what that was.
What's the cost? Not everybody got one of those.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the cost would be determined by the company, right? Company and different variable costs.
Yes, the costs are variable. Okay. We can try to fill in this table and put it on our website with the cost in the next couple weeks if that's something you all would like. So that's something we can do. And I think the other flyer that we handed out was just some general information about those chemicals themselves.
As we move forward,
We're going to try to put some general guidelines for the residents on our website as we move forward. We haven't had a lot of time to react to this so far. So you're next.
My name's Heather. I live and I work here in the community, and I'm glad that I'm getting this education. My question really is, has there been any method of eliminating this from a single home if we did like a whole home filtration or something like that? Is there any method? I hear reverse osmosis over there and they've had no problems. I work right here on Satellite at JH Water, and I'm collecting information so that I can be educated and give as much as I can. Do we have anything in that regard? I think Matt, I don't know if Matt would know anything about that.
So I'm assuming you're drinking City of Melbourne water?
Yeah.
So you can contact them for their specific results if you're worried about that.
What would we bathe in?
Pardon me?
What we bathe in, what we shower in.
That's City of Melbourne. Yeah, so anything that comes out of the tap in your house is City of Melbourne. If it comes out of the outside, sometimes I have an outside hose that's hooked to my well, but you can distinctly smell that water.
Guys, my voice is gone.
Groundwater, given irrigation well, maybe coming from there.
I know you can hear me, but my voice is raspy and gone.
Carbon filtration can also work to remove some of these contaminants. But carbon filtration does work.
So I had a company come out to my house and test our water, and I asked specifically about a full house system. And it was Brevard Water Solutions. The owner came out and he said it's too early for him to speak on PFOA and PFOS specifically as to whether or not his full home system could eliminate it from irrigation, from tap, full home solution.
Okay.
So he said he was going to look more into it to see if it was catalytic carbon filtration.
Right.
He wasn't sure
Okay.
the extent of these chemicals and whether or not it would filter out. So
We work with Easy Water, so we're gonna, now that I have this information from this meeting, my next action item is to get with them and have them test these in their lab. So thank you for that information too.
Julie, do you have next?
I think that this lady's standing up.
Kathy, do you want me to introduce who you are? So I can I let them know about your son? Okay, let me see
She's
it.
gonna introduce, I guess.
This is Kathy, and she has a child.
Sorry.
It's okay. She had my voice. Excuse my voice. I lost it. I'm not feeling well. Kathy has a son who's been going through cancer, lymphoma. We really need to listen to the cancer survivors, their mothers, their patients. This is important. Go ahead, ask your question. I don't know if this is working.
My question is, Julie, remember you were talking about how every day, week, things are changing as far as statistics and what's coming out that's safe and the levels that are safe. I've shared with I think almost everybody that they have come out with that 7 parts per trillion is what is considered safe, not 70. It is 7. So that changes the way we have to look at all of these results. And
That's the website that
yes, it's
that's the CDC.
it's the CDC and the
It's the CDC.
it's a CDC. Yeah, I actually forwarded that article to everybody in the city council so that they could read it as well, and we sent it to the county.
It might not work. I don't know.
Somewhere between 7 to 12, what they're recommending. So again, so that would change everything because that.
Yeah, actually, that'd be a great idea. You could just make maybe a line right here, and then we'll just go in order.
Great. Hi, my name is Chrissy, and I have two real quick questions. One, will this PowerPoint presentation be available online for us to review? Okay, second question. I graduated from O'Galley High School in '96. I'm here representing 4 other people that are either battling cancer, passed away from cancer, that are all within my age bracket. Now, back in the early 80s, we used to play in the hoses. We used to drink out of the hoses. I remember when we went from the groundwater, the well waters, to actual city water. My father's lived in his home for over 40 years now. So these levels we're looking at today, I mean, are there any kind of statistics or any way to measure or even consider what they would have been when I was 10 playing in this water? You know what I mean?
The half-life, do you have them off the numbers, the half-life offhand? The half-life in the groundwater, at least.
Depends on what source you look at too.
Yeah, it depends on what source, but the half-life is like 27 years, roughly. I don't know these numbers exactly, but essentially the groundwater half-life is somewhere in the 20 years. The half-life in the body is somewhere between 18 and 20 years. I mean, these things last a long time. Your question is a very valid one about, I have calls all the time from people who didn't live in Satellite Beach or go to Satellite High who say,
My mother lived here in Indian Harbor, so I spent summers, weekends,
correct.
school.
And right now the health department wouldn't consider your case because you didn't actually have the same exposure. But I have a girl that was diagnosed essentially 6 months after me, same type of cancer as my best friend, who swam in Satellite's pool every day. And she said, how come my case can't be considered the health department? So I've actually brought that up to both the local and the state health department to say, can you look at it globally? Can you accept more zip codes? I think that the Florida Today reporter, who's here, Jim, did run some numbers to show that the Brevard County breast cancer cases were on the higher end compared to a lot of counties in the state of Florida. So I think that we can start with some of these general statements asking the state health department to look at more zip codes because you're on the same water source as Satellite Beach. And so I think that it's not fair to exclude you. I hear you.
And my grandmother passed away from stage 4 ovarian cancer in 2009, and I had genetic testing proving that there is no genetic link to my cancer, and I have diagnosed with extremely aggressive cancer. Stage 3C, I got my lump, and within 3 months I was 3C. So my doctors are really concerned with how aggressive my cancer was.
Right, and your blood test would be useful. And this is actually a great, there are states that really are doing this blood testing values because there actually are certain blood test values that even are linked with cancer. And so one of my questions too is, could they even take 500 volunteers like they have in some of these states, and a lot of us who are cancer victims, we would volunteer, and then we could maybe take some controls who aren't, and we could compare, because then we'd be able to at least get some data to see what the exposures are for the next week.
Hang on, real quick, right over here on the left. I have a big concern. There was a study that I read, I think it was out in the 90s, that says that our groundwater, our shallow aquifer, moves westward from the dune line along the Atlantic at a rate of about 360 feet per day. Now, if the groundwater moves that fast and drains into the Banana River, it should replenish itself from rainwater and be clean of these toxins within a week or two, 3 weeks maybe. Something is continually adding these toxins to the water if the groundwater tests are continually high like this. If the aquifer is pushing us all into the river as well, the river should be a very big concern of ours.
I think it is, and if you read that Patrick Air Force Force report, they actually have a section that talks specifically about their concern in the river as well.
That's exactly what I read.
Yeah. And we all swim in that river. We all swim. Go ahead.
Hi. Because I have a few questions, and I would like to ask a couple, but I have several really, and I obviously can't ask them all right now. So I just want to confirm the best ways to get questions answered after this meeting. Kurt Smith, what's the best way to contact you? Do we Google your name and find a contact? If so, I can do that.
You can call my office, just call the government center and ask for Commissioner Smith.
And what's the number?
Yeah, well, my personal office.
What number do you want
Anybody
me
wants
to
to
call?
write this down, my office number is 321-633-2044.
Okay.
Again, it's 321-633-2044.
Well, my husband talked to your people a couple weeks ago. We have your name in our yard, so I'm glad I have a way to contact you. Thank you.
I had a feeling somebody was leaning against that.
So if I want to get water at my house tested, my pool, whatever, can the Matt's, I don't know if you or somebody else, can you recommend reputable water testing companies? I'm assuming there's going to be a high demand and there may be more reputable ones than others. And so I'd like to, I'm sure we all want to call it reputable.
The only thing I would say is be careful because these are compounds that are difficult to sample because they're in the things that people generally sample. And so if they're not familiar with the contaminant, they need to understand that there's certain types of methods.
So I'm sorry, are you suggesting certain questions that I ask to
Just make sure
find
that
someone
they're
reputable?
familiar with these
Make sure they've
compounds.
done it before. Our Facebook group actually has a lot of people who've asked that very same question, and there's a thread of different companies that people
Okay,
have used.
I will look at that.
And
Thank
so
you.
I'm working with a company too, so if you guys want to come to me, I have an environmental firm that's helping us with independent testing.
So we have those resources.
Who are you?
I'm Stell Bailey.
I'd say just talk to her after.
Okay. All right. So if it's not in our drinking water, but it's in the groundwater, some ways that we can be exposed is swimming in the swimming pool, playing in the sprinklers, breathing the air. Is that
Growing
something
your own
too?
strawberries in your yard.
Right, growing plants, vegetables. What about in breathing it in?
Aerosolization.
There is aerosolization. That would probably be more when the Air Force Base was actually using the chemicals in the jets. The air half-life is only 127 days, so even if we got an air sample now, it wouldn't be accurate 127 days. But yes, the chemicals do aerosolize. There's a 447-page report. If you Google those two chemicals names, PFOA and PFOS, the Human Health Services Department, the government released that report. You probably saw all the media related to it. I would start by reading that. It's really, really cumbersome to read, but it does have a lot of answers to your question. Yeah, so just Google HHS report on the PFOA and PFOS. I think the link's already in, I think the document's already in our Facebook page, so if you go there, it's already listed.
And then I have a question for a friend who couldn't be here today. She's in North Patrick Shores. She has ALS. She has many neighbors who had a few. I say many, I don't know if that's accurate, like 3 other people on her street. Some have died, hers is slow moving. I didn't hear you mention anything about ALS, but I know there have been some things on the website, people saying, and I wonder if you have any more information. She couldn't be here today and she asked me to ask.
Yeah, the health department will only take cancer diagnoses at this point, so that's all I'm tracking. Back in the 1992 report, if you read it, I posted it, but if you go there, they do talk about, they looked at the ALS cases back in 1992 as well. Unfortunately, I haven't found anything specifically linking these chemicals to ALS, but it doesn't mean that she couldn't do a search and find it herself. So that's unfortunately the answer I have right now.
I have a hard time speaking because I have ALS. And I was wondering why they didn't put any wells in the northern part of South Patrick Shores where every time you dig up airplane parts.
So the reason why we didn't test in South Patrick Shores except for on county property is because in the beginning we were not testing in South Patrick Shores because South Patrick Shores is not in the city of Satellite Beach. So we were addressing city of Satellite Beach areas, but then the county called and said, hey, how can we help? And we said, hey, can we put a well on Sea Park? And so that's how that got in there. It was literally the county saying, hey, how can we help? When we further testing in the future, we'll be able to more broadly distribute our testing in areas that we know we want to test. So I know that it's inadequate what we just did, but it was it was something that we could do very quickly and gave you answers very quickly, okay?
You need to test the dump. No, test it.
I have one comment about why one well might be different from another. If you look at the 1943 aerials of the beach area here, it's all dunes. Well, in between the dunes were swales. They're composed of more humatic material. So in high water, those sloughs would fill up and could transport things quicker than they would on top of the dunes. That might be an explanation. The other thing that concerns me is what they're testing for. Obviously the PFs, but my informant tells me that there was a huge photographic lab in Patrick, and that way back during World War II, supposedly they actually produced the photographs of the Enola Gay and the H-bomb going off, color photographs. And my informant says that they had barrels and barrels and barrels of photochemicals. Now, there's a really good website at the University of California, San Diego, where a doctor has analyzed all the chemicals from photography. I think they need to be looked at, and I think testing needs to be done. He says that they use different chemicals now to a certain extent, but some of those earlier chemicals are highly toxic and cancer causing. So I think that needs to be looked at, and maybe testing for those.
Thank you.
Good question. My name's Ethan, and I lived in South Patrick Shores for about 7 years. I don't have cancer, but I do have, and my mom has had a variety of strange health issues related to our immune systems. We get like chronic fatigue, brain fog, aches and pains. I have arthritis, which is really strange at 23. Hard to explain to your friends too. But what my question is are we testing the groundwater for MTBEs and perchlorates? Because I have blood work that I did 2 weeks ago, and I'm in like the 100th percentile for both of those chemicals. So were those tested for?
They were not.
Not yet.
Not yet, so.
That's
So
the list, 'cause I have a bunch of-
Yeah, if there's something you all are curious about, and there's a particular thing that you feel that we need to test for, then go ahead and send that over to me. But no, we only tested for the PFAS and PFOA at this point. So,
Just email city manager?
yep, cbarker@satellitebeach.org.
Good question.
Yeah, I think that's an important question to mention is we don't know for sure if the link is these P chemicals. It still could be other things in the water. And all of our officials know that and are just as concerned as we are. So even if the P's end up being clean, I don't think that will be the end of our investigation.
I want to speak a little bit about that. My name is Linda. I'm born and raised here in Satellite Beach. I graduated Satellite High in 1980. We have a son and daughter-in-law that graduated in 2005. By the grace of God, we're all very healthy. But if you look at these chemical compounds, PFOS and PFOA, the F stands for fluorine. And the chemical equation for PFOS has 17 atoms of fluorine per molecule, and PFOA is 15 atoms of fluorine per molecule. And the article in the newspaper said these compounds bioaccumulate in the body. And in our drinking water, we also have fluoride, which is a fluorine compound added. The city of Melbourne uses hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is actually a toxic waste product from the phosphate mining industry. And all those fluorines can accumulate in the body. And the young man who stood in front of me saying at 23 years old he's experiencing arthritic conditions, that it's a process called skeletal fluorosis. And it could be the groundwater, the drinking water, all like that. What I've been speaking to the city of Melbourne, the city of Satellite Beach is doing their own research into it as well. But these fluorine compounds build up in our body. And Dr. Julie, on the chemical periodic table, there's a series called halogens, which are, I'm sure as a doctor you know, it's chlorine, bromine, fluorine, and iodine. And what happens though is there's this law of halogen displacement, where a halogen of a lower chemical weight can displace a higher chemical weight. And what the theory is right now, especially in cancer cases and especially in breast cancer, I want to share with anyone here that's been affected with breast cancer, is that the fluorines that we take into our body from whatever sources are actually displacing iodine. And in that process, it can make people more susceptible to breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and prostate cancer in particular is what I've read research on. So I just wanted to share that information with you and ask you if you'd heard anything about this class of halogens and that in compounding in the body that a bioaccumulation of fluorine elements, compounds.
Good question.
I haven't personally done any research, but I know that fluorine has been in question actually for years before they actually added it into the water. There are a lot of studies the government did showing the safety of that chemical, but it's been questioned recently based on what you've been saying. I haven't personally studied it myself.
If you could share that information, because I think it's important. I think it's going to be new research that's going to take hold, especially for cancers.
Yeah, thank you.
So just remember that you have a line of people behind you.
Thank you. Jim Langenbach. I live in South Patrick Shores. I've been up there for over 20 years. I'm actually a groundwater remediation engineer and been practicing that for over 25 years. I was in Tallahassee actually earlier this week meeting with the DEP on some other issues, but we did talk about PFAS. The DEP is going to be setting a health advisory level for PFAS. That number is going to be 100 parts per trillion, just so everybody's aware of that. The other thing I wanted to just let the county know, the city know, the DEP has a site investigation section in Tallahassee, as well as an environmental forensics section in Tallahassee. They're actually funding, rather than all the money coming out of the city of Satellite Beach coffers and the county coffers, there's a department with DEP that investigates things like this. They're actually doing SIS investigations in Escambia County right now, as well as the city of Stewart. So it's probably worthwhile to be reaching out to the folks up in Tallahassee to see if you can bring them in on this and potentially get some funding assistance or have them support the work that's being done. The other thing I just want to point out is AFFF. That's kind of what we're looking for. AFFF is, you're looking at sort of at Patrick Air Force Base, but the fire departments use large quantities of AFFF, and probably if you were to sample any groundwater well in any county in the state of Florida, you're going to find perfluorinated compounds. If you're really interested in looking for perfluorinated compounds, you might want to start, before you start putting in additional groundwater wells and doing that sort of testing, looking at the use records of AFFF by the city of Satellite Beach within your records. Look through your material safety data sheets. Look through where AFFF has been applied, say where a house is burned down and where there's been large volumes of AFFF put in the ground. Those are the areas where you want to focus your investigation. Was it?
Just to respond to that, we actually do, we've actually been in discussions with FDEP already, but with regard to our firefighting, and same with Cocoa Beach, we use water, and then we may use a foam can in that water every now and then with a severe structure fire. So we are looking at where those structure fires could be, if that's possible. But again, we don't use that type of chemical on a regular basis. We traditionally fight all our fires with water.
Hi, my name is Shannon Munger Coleman. I'm on 2 of the panels because I've had cancer twice, in 97 and 2016, both breast cancer. I grew up right across the street, Cassia, right across the street from Surfside. My father was one of the chief guys that in the 70s and 80s resisted, tapping into the city water until he really had no choice. But I drank water while I was going to Delora, Surfside, Satellite High. I also was on baseball teams, and we drank out of potable water in all of these fields everywhere that we practiced or played at. And I also was on the swim team. I mean, those are some things that people realistically don't think about. My husband's a fireman. He's been with Indian Harbor for 28 years, and, they fill pools periodically. All of that water that we all are relaxing in, it really is, something that needs to be looked at. But what I'm trying to say is, you guys are talking about the water right now. The water that we had as children was not the same that you're talking about. So that's all in our system. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, that's why I love that to be helpful. Thank you.
Sandra Can, South Patrick Shores. Couple questions. One pertains to asking the county what the capacity is on the water plant right now. I have a concern of the
sewage plant because according to the city's numbers that they got from the county, it calculates to 93% capacity. So that causes more dumping into the canals. I think the canal should be a point where you test too, because you have an issue beach side with the groundwater infiltrating into the pipes because the pipes are leaking, which cause them to go capacity during rain events. So particularly at the canal area, that might be an idea to test. The other thing is, as you pointed out, this might not be the link to the cancer. And I know when I purchased my home, the original owner told me that it was a naval airfield before. That was before the Air Force existed. My father's 81. I followed up, talked to him the other night. He told me back in the war, they had a lot of oil containers from the aircraft, and they would just dump them on sawdust in the ground. Well, there's a dump site in South Patrick Shores. So my question to you, Dr. Julie, is there a higher incidence of cancer in the area of the dump site?
I can't answer that other than the
Yes.
original.
So I understand that Bell Daily has a map where they overlaid that information. Would they be willing to come up and show us that information?
She has it, she can pass it around. The original South Patrick Shores is probably the strongest data that would support what you're saying, but she does have it, you can see.
It's the
that.
same data we got yesterday.
One neighbor, I found a bomb when she was digging her pool. So, and the report you have from 92 that is on the base says it was an individual dump site. Well, it wasn't an individual dump site. I mean, the stuff I have found in my yard and in neighbors' yards where it's casings and metal and concrete and even the guy who owned it, when he dug the pond, he said he dug up mattresses and all kinds of stuff. So would it be in something to research what was dumped at the time of the war? Because this is whatever range that was, 1943 or whatever, what substances were they putting in the ground? And it would make sense that in the area of the area where it's being dumped, those concentrations may be higher, right? And I'm right on top of that dump site, so I'm concerned.
Yeah, I hear your concerns.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. I'm not a current resident of Satellite Beach, but I did live at Patrick Air Force Base in the early 90s. Fast forward 16 years later, I was diagnosed with 2 forms of breast cancer, very aggressive and at advanced stage within 3 months. Now, 16 years later, my daughter is experiencing some serious illness. And her son, who is almost 2, has had developmental delay issues. So I'm very interested in the report from Patrick Air Force Base. And my question is to the city manager, you said Patrick Air Force Base is cooperating and they've given you some reports. Will those be made public? And if so, where would they get that information?
Yeah, I posted the link to their big PDF. I don't know if you have anything more than that.
Yeah, we have the link, so we can put that on our website, but they have a link to their website with that information.
On Satellite Beaches
The
website?
Patrick Air Force Base.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I posted in my talk too, the link, so you can access it.
Hi, my question is for Dr. Julie. So there was a template distributed with a bunch of hotspots. Can you elaborate further with that about any specific cancer types?
Yeah, those are just a mapping of everyone's diagnosis. That's just to show like a pattern. Essentially, it's always a visual to show that you have cancers in more areas close by. And it was very obviously visually dramatic when they did South Patrick Shores back in the 90s. So it's just a visual, just to try to help.
Data we collected independently through our Facebook group that we put on here. In fact, we had 113 that we only mapped. There's hundreds more because they didn't give us an exact location. It's only 117, and 4 people just gave me their address last night. That's why we get new diagnoses every day.
Sure, and this was adults and children then?
Yes, that's adults and children.
What years was it spanning?
I believe, Stella, what years is that map spanning? Just 2010 to 2018, or is that all years?
You can ask the map guy over there, he'll go over all the details with you.
That's all years.
All years.
Starting
Okay.
from the original cases until the most recent that was given last
Got it.
night.
What
It's
year?
actually 117.
And then your reports, don't just put like C Park area, but like your street, you don't give me your address or just your address or.
We need street numbers to make it accurate.
Yeah, a street and your age and your gender.
Yes.
I mean, those are like the, besides your actual
A lot of
diagnosis.
people say like Satellite Beach, but then they say First Street, which is not Satellite Beach, that's actually South Patrick Shores. So it's really hard to kind of.
It is an important distinction, because believe it or not, South Patrick Shores has a very small population, and so we can demonstrate again in one of your cases in just South Patrick Shores, you may even have a stronger voice in the state.
Speak up.
If you want water testing, we will have information, we're looking at the firm, it's going to, they're offering us.
Patrick Air Force Base, which was South Patrick.
We did the 2 chemicals, but we don't use the 25 that we're gonna give out, we will have it to you guys right now.
First off,
We're Florida Health Connection, and then I also help run the government on Facebook.
but we told I had a real case. Well, in my yard, they had to dump 10 loads of dirt. I'll never forget that. And we had a town meeting back in '93. So in '94, it was 15 cases where they lost our specimen. So I won't forget that because I had to go through surgery twice. I'm a survivor, but I have to stay covered up. It's 100 degrees. So I need to know what's going on, even though I'm a survivor. But skin cancer is not a joke because it's in the breast. And they told me it was very rare. Patrick didn't know what they were dealing with, and I lost 2 friends to it. So if you can find out, I can get you some of the research, but they lost a lot of our records.
People are living this.
I can remember, we were over there on Patrick. There was a lot of stuff buried around our home. So we had to start moving out of the house. And I think you might be too young to remember, but my son went to school. So he told me to get a hold of. So I'm asking you now, if you can remember, there was a lot of stuff over there. There was a lot of us that came up with it, but 15 of our specimens were lost in Texas. So when they did find it, they considered us being crazy. But skin cancer, the way that they said it, is some kind of rare chemical. I didn't play in that chemical. Every Tuesday, the people were stationed at Patrick could remember you had to have your yards redone. So they were doing some kind of land deal with the football team. And we had all of this stuff running down the yard. Well, my yard was about to cave in. And they come out and put all of these chemicals, but nobody said anything. But you couldn't sue the government because it was the government.
I hear you, I'm sorry. We're just gonna take these last questions, the people standing up, and then afterwards you can find us individually if you have them.
I guess mine is directed to you, Julie. My son's a 2004 graduate, a 45-year resident, working in Florida County in my past. My youngest son is battling testicular cancer. He grew up in South Patrick Shores on Dover Street. He's not one of your numbers yet.
No, he's not.
He's too sick to be here. He grew up playing in the sprinklers, and there were sections of our yard on Dover Street that probably to this day you can't grow a plant. So nothing will grow. And my concern is the groundwater, and my question to you, how long does that stay in your blood system?
19 years. Half-life is 19 years.
19.
So a lot of us that raised our children here in the 80s, my son was diagnosed 4 months ago. The numbers are going to increase. How old is he? He's 32.
That's definitely not one of my cases.
So I'm sure that.
And that's exactly this is what I get every single day, and that's why I'm so concerned. I find out every single day of a new young case. I think in another month, I'll double my numbers. I mean, it's a problem.
And Virginia, might we do more testing in the county areas in the future? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Rothberg, just a clarification, I think a little bit, is this map like how where those cases are?
Yeah, it's just a representation of about 110 cases where they were, just showing a pattern of them being close by in the area.
I heard the beginning statistics, like, the fellow who mentioned.
Speak into the mic.
Yeah, the fellow mentioned the initial numbers and the levels, and they were in different units than what we heard from the city, it's like, which we read in the paper,
Parts per trillion.
Parts per trillion, and that was not quite true, so I didn't know where those fell, where those low.
Micrograms per liter, 0.07 micrograms per liter is the same thing as 70 parts per trillion.
Yeah, it should all be in parts per trillion, but when they sometimes write it, they write the microgram per liter. But it's all parts per trillion, and we've asked everyone to try to stick to parts per trillion so that we can make.
I apologize, I didn't.
That's okay. No, I'm just saying, like in reports, just for clarification. There are, I think it was the school board that some of them were parts per nanograms, parts per billion, but had to be converted.
So converting, and converting that, does that equate to what we're finding in the wells that the city did, that everything was below the 70?
Okay, so ours was approximately 30 at Sea Park, 20 at the Jackson Avenue property, and about 41 at City Hall. And those are parts per trillion.
Okay. And then Jackson put what is the satellites on, and when he first heard that through your posting.
That's correct.
okay. And since, of course, it was also, but we're looking at satellites, that would be a site where maybe, people in the band, watching the field, players. I was wondering why they didn't even look at perhaps using that one, site, just right in the heart of that field.
I've actually asked what the school representation is here. My concern is the field of Satellite High, because a lot of the people who have had cancer played sports on that field. It seems to be a consistent pattern to me. I have voiced that concern to the school board as well. But the school board went a step further. They went to testing the drinking water, which they're going to repeat at Satellite High. But I do think that's something to consider, is there is a well under the Satellite High field. And a lot of these people were
It's big belief that drinking water is good if we don't have to do with that.
Right, yeah, we'll take any good
But
news.
it's the well water which comes.
Right.
Just as a conclusion, I mean, where do we stand as far as, I don't know, is the federal EPA, I've heard the state is, but is this coordinated, is the federal level also been brought in that, no? Is there a reason why?
Literally, because yeah, I mean, we got the test results on Wednesday.
No, you're just aware of this whole thing, that,
Yes,
it's saying that,
totally.
like, they just knowing that this is being.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be talking to a lot of people in the next month.
And I just think there's a conclusion at this point where we stand. What do we walk away after leaving this meeting to feel? I mean, is there any, if we're looking at a meter, are we, yeah, I mean, we just have a summary to see at this point, I know what testing will go on, but just to, we can walk out to, should we be shaking or should we be, like, is it still up in the air from, again, we didn't drink the groundwater, but, I understand the environment, it's aerosol. Is there some conclusion that so far the experts have all to say how we should feel at this moment? We're about the drinking water, but,
I mean, if I had to give advice personally, because I just don't know enough right now to be able to give you hard rules and guidelines to live by, but I would look at it very cautiously, look at your irrigation cautiously. I wouldn't fill your pools anymore.
city water.
Yeah, use your city water to do that. But it's irrigation wells, which it's different than drinking water. So if you feel, it's kind of like, we know that there's certain pesticides that cause cancer, but people liberally apply pesticides to their yards every day. So it's whether, I think at this point, make your personal judgment of whether you want to continue to expose yourself to your irrigation well or not.
Just a comment regarding the future testing for schools and the county. Given, I appreciate that it was quick turnaround results. I know everybody here appreciated that. But going forward, you know, to confirm or deny some of the inconclusive results, I think maybe testing some schools or some areas that are inland might help confirm or deny things.
Yeah, I do think a lot of people have asked that exact question, for comparisons, to show other wells in other areas.
So I've lived here for about 29 years, and just recently, I went to the dentist, back to the dentist, and the dentist asked me, where am I drinking my water at? They had to remove all of my teeth, okay? So, we're talking about groundwater, but really had 4 animals in 2 years pass away from cancer. It's not just our groundwater, people, and I wanna thank everybody for helping, but it's not our groundwater. It's not just the groundwater. 4 animals in 2 years.
Erosion at the base. What about the erosion?
Yeah.
Where do you live? Right behind here. Right there. Also, I've been on many, things for the manatees in our lagoon. And when we turn the manatees over because they're dead, they've got cancer all over their body. Dolphins all over their body, they've got cancer. So we really need to look at our drinking water, our groundwater, and everything else. Just because we have irrigation in our ground doesn't mean that the animals don't walk out there, get the cancer treatment or the cancer problem, and bring it inside and lick their paws.
My name is Matt. I live at 1777 A1A, which is the south end of Satellite Beach. My father got cancer back in 2008, and he got cancer after spending about a year living in a house in South Patrick Shores. The map that was distributed shows clearly that there's 2 clustered areas of cancer cases. We kind of have an idea in terms of looking at the historical data, why that might be. It corresponds with activity from the Air Force Base before all the houses were built. So I just have a couple questions. Will you guys be trying to get an EPA Superfund status obtained for all of this? Will you guys be conducting soil tests throughout the area to not just to see if you can find one spot where it's coming from, but in an eliminative process to make sure that everywhere is safe? And as recently as a couple weeks ago, Ms. Barker, you said that there was no additional testing necessary for the property on Shearwater and A1A. Given these test results, do you still feel that way?
So, I don't think we don't ever want to seek a Superfund designation. That would be bad. We don't ever want to have that. So if we have testing that demonstrates there's a big problem, then EPA would designate it a Superfund site. But I don't think we'd ever actively go out and try to seek one. That would be devastating for our community in so many ways.
A Superfund site was designated a long time ago, and then it was archived. It would actually be incredibly helpful in terms of getting funds for testing and getting compensation for people that have been affected by this.
A Superfund site is designated when there is already been determined to be a problem. And water. Yeah. After that, then they give funds to clean it up. So that's what I'm saying is if our testing results and it's set to a high level that it would reach the level of a Superfund site, then at that point you'd start getting funding for it, and that's when you would get a designation. But to actively go out and seek that I would not ever recommend that. I've worked with Superfund sites my whole career, and trust me, you don't want to have that designation. So yes, we will be doing testing to make sure that everything here is safe. And if it's not, then we'll react to that. But that's basically the route we're going to take. What was it?
Do you still feel that no testing is necessary on the property at Shearwater A1A?
Yes. So that property has already been through a countless of environmental assessments. All of those assessments, Patrick Air Force Base provided those to us. They're all on our website, so you can review all those.
The phase 2 is the actual soil testing that was conducted 20 years ago. Does it still fall underneath what the guidelines are, the new ones that have been coming out?
So if the phase 2 testing was done and there's already been construction going on, then that ship has sailed.
Wow.
So you're not going to test it around there?
It's not our property, you know.
All right. Thank you.
Gentleman in the white shirt, an official last question. I'm just making sure that you guys know.
First off, thank you. I feel like I've gotten a lot of good information today, and I know you all were scrambling, and I wanted to say thank you. I am a parent of an elementary schooler, and regarding the drinking water at the school, I know it tested clear, but I was concerned that we have traces of the PFBA, whereas City of Cocoa does not. Are we going to be testing to see if this is coming from City of Melbourne's water supply? Is it coming from our pipes? How are we going to confirm this is not an issue that can be just solved at the water treatment facility to begin?
A lot of people have asked that same question. I think she's right for it.
Right.
Well, somewhat. I think this is a problem that we're going to have to solve as a community. People have requested when I came in that we put filtration systems in each of our schools here in Beachside. To me, that's just putting 9 Band-Aids on a small area of problem, if we think it's a problem. So the EPA, the CDC, if it's 2 and 4 cards for 12 of the 13 schools, there's not a problem. If we as a community decide we don't want that in our water, just like the City of Cocoa, then I think we have to address it at a bigger level, because students can come to school and drink the 2 parts and go across the street to the park at Satellite Beach and get the 2 parts, or then go down to Indian River Beach and get the 2 or 4 parts. So for me, for my children in this community, I would like it out completely, so that anywhere they get a drink of water and water quality is safe. That's my goal. I plan to work with our team to contact Melbourne Utilities and work with them.
Will you allow parents to allow their children to bring in bottled water? Because a lot of teachers do not allow that in school.
If you have a problem with that, contact me directly. Go to the school board website, click on school board. You can get my.
Something else from the school saying that they should be allowed. That should be a choice of a parent.
Absolutely. Just reach out to me and I can get that straightened out. Both of my children, all years, have brought a water bottle every single day from our water system at home, and you should be able to do the same.
As you get answers from City of Melbourne Water, how are you going to communicate that to us?
I have a newsletter that I put out every 2 weeks from me personally, not even from the school district, where I keep everybody updated. I also have a school board Facebook page that's just mine to communicate with Just District 3. So if you're on Facebook, hit like on that, and I'll keep everybody informed.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to add that we will also coordinate with them and get the information out on our website and our Facebook pages. So we've all been talking to each other quite a bit, a lot. So we'll be glad to try to help push that information out as well. And then I just wanted to make sure too, before you all, before we get to the end, we're going to try to put together a list of all of the household products that contain this chemical, because it's pretty extensive. And I think, we have to remember that sometimes we, it may not be a source that's somewhere else. It may be us. So we're going to go ahead and put that together and put that on our website so you all have that information as well.
Thank you. The results from the satellite high retest too, I will put out for you all to see as soon as we get them.
Hi, my name is Erin. I am a South Patrick Shores resident, and I'm also a volunteer on the Florida Health Connection. And I am very interested in this, so I've done quite a bit of research. I try my very best to make sure that I cite my sources when we post anything on the Facebook page. To that end, I'm going to share with you a couple of statistics that I found, and I'll be more than happy to put them on the Florida Health Connection this afternoon. Minnesota Department of Health Risk Assessment of August of 2017 addresses PFBA and says that it is a persistent in the environment, meaning it does not break down easily in soil or water. PFBA more easily dissolves in water than other PFCs and does not stick to soil. This means it can move fast in the environment and may contaminate large areas of groundwater. According to the EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group, in November of 2009, PFBA is a member of the perfluorocarbon family, and it is used to make the nonstick, grease-stained, water-resistant coating products that we're all familiar with. But it also is, it says here that they are linked to cancer, birth defects, and infertility, and they are extremely persistent in the environment. There is almost no toxicological data for PFBA in the public domain. As a matter of fact, the EPA Administrator, Lisa Jackson, has identified several of these substances found in the study as a priority chemical of concern. These include BPA, brominate, flame retardants, and the entire class of the perfluorinated chemicals. So we keep referring to these EPA standards, these health standards, which I would be very interested to see that source being cited, because what this really does is it's referring to the minimal reporting levels from the Unregulated Contaminating Monitor Rule of 2012. And it says that, yes, even though that there is not reason to have, the sky is falling, rather the implications of the detection should be judged considering health effects information, which is still under development or being refined for unregulated contaminants. According to the EPA, this is titled PFOA and PFOA Drinking Water Health Advisories in November 2016. EPA's health advisories are non-enforceable and non-regulatory. So by definition, non-regulatory means not comparable, and these provide technical information to state agencies and other public health officials on health effects, analytical methodologies, and treatment technologies associated with drinking water contamination. PFOA detections in source water and drinking water are reported in several published studies. These studies frequently involve targeted local sampling, thus the findings are not representative of a national occurrence. So to keep referring to these as some sort of standard is just not accurate. The health advisories are based on exposure from drinking water ingestion, not from skin contact or breathing. In 2016, the Food and Drug Administration amended its regulations to no longer allow PFOA and PFOS to be added to food packaging. EPA has not established national primary drinking water regulations for PFOA and PFOS. EPA is evaluating PFOA and PFOS and drinking water contaminants in accordance with the process required by the Safety Drinking Water Act. And the Safety Drinking Water Act is a federal law that protects public drinking water supplies through the nation. Under this act, EPA sets standards for drinking water quality, and its partners implement various technical and financial programs to ensure drinking water. There was a lot of information, so again, I'll put it on our Facebook page. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of misinformation from the people that we're looking to for answers. And I just would love it if we could work as a community together to say that this is not, there is nothing out there to say that this is safe for our children in the schools. There's nothing, and if you can provide that for me, God, please, please. My daughter goes to school, she's in elementary school at Sea Park. I feel like South Patrick Shores is an unrepresented 1 mile by 1 mile area of our community. And, it's just very unnerving that on Friday, I was there enrolling her, and then Friday afternoon we get this news. And I know I'm not the only parent that is concerned about the fact that filters and water bottles are being questioned. I mean, we don't want to hear about more testing. There's studies out there that's already been done. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's copy off of somebody else that they've already gotten further along than we have.
Thank you.
My name is Dean Ferry, and I want to first thank Dr. Julie and all the volunteers and everything that they've done. They've put an incredible amount of work to bring this to light. This is a picture of my daughter, Allie. She went to Special Holland, Delora, and Satellite Beach. Graduated in 2010. She has a stage 4 glioblastoma. She has months to maybe years to live. This is real. This is freaking real. She can't be here because she's so sick. So I don't really have any questions to say other than I'm an engineer by trade and by schooling, and the data is there. The data is there. We just need to boil it down and figure out what's going on. I think everybody knows what's going on.
Hi, I'm John Levitt, and I've lived in South Patrick Shores for 20 years, and the last 28 years in Satellite Beach. I've swum in these canals, I've swum around the dump out at Patrick. Hey, back in those days, that's where they went out there fishing and everything else. I've lost a lot of people around here that are friends over the years. People who worked at Patrick, people who live in communities. And this has hit once before too. You know, the people came up and they went through all this and they found out that this wasn't enough. What keeps coming is, I think it's time that we look at our environmental assessments and we can, the county does these. Juanita Causeway was put in. When they put in a Juanita, there had to be assessments. I personally saw them dig up behind Patrick Air Force Base Hospital. And that's where they needed to dump the drums, right in that area. So they've been there for years when I had looked at it. The area around there needs to really be checked. And that's really the area that's real important, is that area a mile by mile around Pineda. On both sides. I'm sure the Air Force has impact statements. I know that the county has an environmental staff. All those things in these wells that have been done for years. I think it may be time for everybody to kind of get together and see what we have, and then see what we need to do, and do it fairly quickly. It's gone on way too long. It's time to get something